Yes, the president delivering his first State of the Union address. New polls overnight showing overwhelmingly Americans loved it. One poll, 75% approved. Another, 50% said it was great. I don't know how the Democrats are going to spin this. They want you in the pit of misery. They're boxed in right now because they want you to fail. If the economy fails, they win. If you don't have a job, you win. They win. If it's 1% growth, they win. Unbelievable. It's the pit of misery is what they were last night. The Democrats sitting on their hands. Nancy Pelosi, what was that about? She looked like death warmed over. Bless her heart, as my mother would say. Black dress, chewing on her lip. And then what about Chapstick Joe? What was up with that response? I mean, that was like the kid off the rugby team. Unbelievable night for the president and Republicans. Maybe, just maybe they can turn the corner. Just maybe they can get some kind of a coherent message. And just maybe they can snatch victory here from the jaws of defeat. The Democrats doing the exact opposite. Joining us now to sort all this out. Of course, he was there last night, and he was standing up and clapping because he loves when the economy is roaring ahead at 4.5%, or what Larry Kudlow says at 5%. Joining us now, Congressman, Republican 5th District, Virginia. That's the Lynchburg area and thereabouts. Tom Garrett. Congressman, great to have you.
John Fredericks, if you're near Eastern Market, I could have walked in and done it in the studio. How are you?
I know. I am very close. I think somebody's saying that you reside in this area. Our studio is on 9th Street. Can't give the address lest someone try to find me.
By the technical legal definition, I reside in Buckingham County, but by the reality of how often I spend the night up here, I'm pretty darn close to you.
Okay, well, I love this area. I love the Eastern Market area and walking distance to everything. So fabulous, right by the metro, great studio location. So the next time you'll have to come in. Now, Congressman, I'm pretty pumped. I thought the speech last night was a home run. I thought the tone was there. But look, when you get results, I mean, it's easy to make a speech like this when you have results. And he's got that. And I thought outlining policies going forward, he was spot on. My favorite line in it was when he said, because Americans are dreamers too. I thought that was the best line of the night. But what about your Democratic colleagues there? I mean, they were kind of somber. What was up with that?
You know, it would be really easy to point out the fact that President Trump said we almost 4 times more than President Obama, but said I almost 4 times fewer than President Obama. There's a July, I believe, 9th or 12th, 2012 story about the number of times that the predecessor said I, and then there's a story about the number of times that this president said we. I'm going to move away from that and back into sort of the messaging. There's been such an incredible effort to pit Americans against one another, to balkanize, to create animosity and even anger. It manifests itself on a daily basis in our lives by virtue of how some people comport themselves when they find issues upon which they disagree with others. And that's not who we're supposed to be. Let me say clearly that any American should be well counseled by the guidance of Dr. King, who said we should judge individuals by the content of their character and not the color of their skin or their national origin, etc. However, there is nothing that's racist or antithetical to common sense about controlling our borders and conducting immigration based on the needs of this great nation. And we can do that and still be, as we've been for at least a century, the compassionate leader of the world. And I just was delighted to see, you know, I've complained on this show repeatedly about this president's messaging. I got nothing bad to say today.
Well, look, you have been honest about that and not liking, you know, some of the way he's communicated different things. But, yeah, I agree with you. I thought last night he was masterful. He delivered what I thought was a home run, grand slam, spot on, everything on message. And, of course, the story is the results. When you have these kind of results, and what I thought was great last night is the president had an opportunity. I think about 45 million people tuned in. So it's a huge number. We're waiting for that overnight, but that seems to be the estimates, rivaling Obama's first State of the Union speech in 2010. So, look, you look at this, and the president had an opportunity to talk to nearly 50 million people last night, right in the eye, no CNN, no spin, no New York Times, no Washington Post. right in the eye. And then you look at the Democrats and their response, sitting there on their hands, not clapping, not standing up. And it's like, why aren't you celebrating success in the economy for everybody? I mean, even if you think you could do better, I would have expected the Democrats last night to say, yeah, the economy's doing great. We're going to make it even better. Here's how.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, look, the economy's doing great. We put the country on this pathway. So he's reaping some of the benefits of our policies. If you trust us, we'll make it even better. How hard is that? And I think they can say that and mean it and believe it, right? I disagree entirely. But that, whatever. I don't want to talk about the president really set a tone that I want to try to follow it to the extent that we should love our brothers and sisters. We shouldn't be concerned with differences. We should unite around common ground, and then we can have debates on policy, and that's exactly what we're supposed to do. But to read the stories about how Thanksgiving dinner is contentious because family members are angry at one another because they have disagreements on policy ideas, etc. That's too bad. It shouldn't be that way. And I like to point to this, and you can speak to it firsthand. I mean, Dave Marsden's my friend. Chad Peterson's my friend. I was looking at GovTrack congressional ratings last night. Raul Revalier is, I think, the most liberal member of Congress right after Barbara Lee, and he here in Washington is my friend. And that's the way it should be. And
yes.
Raul and I don't agree on a whole lot, but
right.
We sure do enjoy talking to each other for 5 or 10 minutes, 3 times a week. And that's, how are you going to? First of all, there's an old cliche that familiarity breeds contempt. To the contrary,
yes.
In the political realm, familiarity sets aside contempt, and to understand where somebody's coming from is important, just to understand somebody. So, if you say, hey, I want to protect the southern border, and somebody screams that you're racist, it's real hard to have a conversation with that person. And I think we need to step away from that rhetoric and that tone. As to Leader Pelosi, I will use one word, and I'm going to leave it, and that is just very disappointing. Disappointing.
I agree with that, and I think that is the right word to use, and I appreciate the fact that, you want to elevate the tone. And Congressman Tom Garrett, we agree on many things, and one of them is what you just said. I mean, I believe in a lot of my best friends are very liberal, as you know. I am friends with Mark Warner. I'm friends with the people you said in the State House, Chad Peterson, Dave Marsden, Dick Saslaw. I mean, these are my friends. And I talk to them
hilarious.
A lot.
He's just a wonderful guy to spend time with. He and I think, very much enjoyed trading friendly quips back and forth on policy issues. What's wrong with that? Nothing.
You got to be able to have a
Tip
dialogue.
O'Neill and Ronald Reagan were really opposed on so many things, and I think had a real mutual admiration. That's a good thing.
Well, they'd fight on policy all day, and then at 6 o'clock they'd get together and they'd have a scotch and try to get things worked out. And that's, you can't get anything done if you don't have a dialogue. You have to. Everything starts, Tom Garrett, with a conversation. And if you can't have a conversation with somebody and try to find some common ground, even if it's family, even if it's baseball.
Let's go to substance on that. I know I'm butting in on your show.
Go ahead.
I'm not. I'm trying to wrap my brain around what the president's offered on DACA. But I do know this. DACA is deferred action, meaning essentially a perpetual sort of limbo status. President Trump just outlined a pathway to citizenship for 3 times as many people as President Obama ever did. I'm still sort of reviewing the particulars, but he won't get any credit for that.
Nope. In fact, that again puts the Democrats in a box because, look, Tom, they have gone on TV, and I've had this debate on CNN for a very long time. They have gone on TV for 12 months, and they said, oh, it's the kids, it's all about the kids, it's the kids, these poor kids. What are we going to do with these kids? We can't throw these kids out. They have jobs, they're productive, it's not their fault. Don't you care about the kids? It's the kids. And then the president says, you know what? You're right. It is about the kids. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm not only going to take the 800,000 that applied for DACA, but I know there's another million out there that were afraid to apply. I'm going to take them too. And not only am I going to not defer anything, I'm going to give them amnesty, which I promised in the campaign I wouldn't do. And I'm going to give them a pathway to citizenship. And I'm going to let them bring in their spouse or their minor children if they should have any outside of the USA. I'm going to do all that. And in exchange, I want a long-term legislative solution for immigration reform. And the Democrats' response is, oh, no, we're not going to do that because we want chain migration, because that's how we get
that. It's that
votes.
They want to have a political issue, I think. And if you do deferred action, look up the definition of deferred. Deferred action is really long-term inaction. And if you do that, then you've got a political issue you can dust off whenever you want to. And if the southern border is porous, then you've got new young people being brought in all the time, right? And the real victims here are the people who are sort of looking over their shoulder. If we control that southern border, then we can create some certainty. And golly, Ned, I mean, this is easy. I can remember instances where I was able to work across the aisle with people and was grateful and thanked them, and publicly so. I mean, that should be, that, every member of any legislative body who's been there for a while should be able to say, yeah, I've worked with people from across. I'm co-sponsoring 19 Democrat bills right now. I have 39 different Democrat co-patrons on my bills.
I mean, that is fantastic.
And I'm proud of that.
Well, that's how you get things done. You have to be able to talk to people that you don't agree with, and you have to reach across the aisle or the spectrum, and I applaud you for doing that. Congressman, the president saying yesterday, open mic in public, look, I'm going to release this memo, and I know last week you were talking a little bit about it. The Democrats are already spinning it, saying, oh, it's fake news. What is in this memo, and is it as dramatic as some people are saying it is?
Well, just because they're going to release it doesn't mean they have, which means I still can't talk about the contents of it.
Right.
But it would be frightening if we were to learn that the levers of federal government power had, contrary to the rule of law, been leveraged against American citizens. And it would, to me, be even more frightening if then a group of people suggested that it was a bigger deal to them to bring down somebody where there's just no evidence of high crimes or misdemeanors than it was to ensure that the government wasn't levied against its non-criminal citizenry. And that's what I'm afraid of, that you'll see what's in the memo and that an entire segment of the population will go, whatever, get Trump. After Watergate, the number of Americans self-identifying as Republicans hit an all-time low at 23%. I'm afraid that the number of people identifying as Democrats isn't going to go anywhere because they're not going to pay any attention. Schiff is already sort of trying to lay out the foundations for, this isn't any big deal, which, again, I mean, we'll learn what we learn, but if it is that the levers of government power have been leveraged against American citizens without probable cause and due process, you should be very afraid, right? I mean, I was vocal in trying to put safeguards to privacy rights on FISA. Oh, by the way, along with Democrat Jerry Nadler, Democrat Zoe Lofgren, Democrat Ron Wyden, Democrat Ted Lieu, and Republican Rand Paul and Justin Amash and Jim Jordan, right? So if I can stand up for freedom and privacy and due process alongside Democrats, I would hope Democrats would stand up with Republicans when those things are violated by the very state that is supposed to serve the people.
And, before
I'm afraid they won't, and that's scary.
Before this memo comes out, the way the Democrats are spinning it, you would think that the Democrats would be saying, you know what, let's put politics aside. We have to investigate what's in here, and if it's real, this is like really bad for the country. Instead, they're discrediting it. And look, the American people eventually are going to get a chance to see what's in here. They're going to have to make a decision for themselves. But
well, if I were a journalist, if I were John Fredericks and I could get an Adam Schiff or somebody on my show, I would say, okay, is there any truth to these allegations? Okay, if there is truth to these allegations, is that a threat to our republic? All right, if these things that are outlined occurred, and again, I'm not going to get into any particulars at all.
Right.
Then what should be the response? Should someone go to prison if they bypassed rule of law in order to advance the political agenda? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Who is it that you think should go to prison? I mean, there you go.
You just
Of
gave
course,
me.
they could just say no, there's no truth to it, but
You just gave me all
I
my
would
line
submit
of
that where
questioning.
something is undergirded by supporting evidence, that is the court. But again, though, I wouldn't put anything past, say, for example, Miss Pelosi.
Yeah. Well, look, at some point there is a reckoning, right? There is an accounting for this. And the really red flag to me here was McCabe, Deputy Director McCabe, getting out with 60 days to go. I mean, basically he said he was going to resign. You just sit there, close the windows in your office, turn off your phone. You sit there for 60 days and retire. He couldn't make it to 90 days. They had to fire him. It only leaves me to speculate there was something in this memo where he's in it. And I think these people are in a world of hurt. I also thought
I don't think they are. I mean, you got Strzok, who literally changed the two most important words in his oversight of the Clinton email scandal. I mean, the only words that matter in a trial for criminal negligence is gross and negligent. And those words were in the Clinton. I mean, she's boom, slam dunk convicted. And they're in the summary, and Strzok changes them to extremely careless, which is nebulous and without legal meaning, and thus opens the barn door and says, go on, move, horse. I didn't mean to do that as a reference to Miss Clinton. Sincerely, I didn't.
Right.
And there's nothing that's happened there. Nothing. We know that happened.
Right.
And nobody, again, I'll ask the same rhetorical question I think I did last week on your show. Whatever happened to the person who forged the memo regarding George W. Bush's Air National Guard service? Nothing? That's correct. Tell me about the investigation. Oh, there wasn't one? That's correct. So someone tried to influence an American presidential election from within the borders of this country illegally, and we didn't investigate and never found out who it was, and now we should be surprised that people are doing the same sort of thing again?
Incredible.
No.
Yep. I tell you what, we're going to see how this plays out. Thank you for giving me my line of journalistic questioning when I get one of these Democrats on in the next several days. Tom Garrett, out of time. I want to thank Tom Garrett for being with us, Congressman, Republican, 5th District of Virginia, fighting the good fight. And like me, talks to everybody. Got to have a conversation to make things work. But I'm telling you,
it's just a great country with great people who have a lot in common and some things that are different, and we ought to focus more on the commonality.
And I think last night, the Republicans, as bad as their messaging is, I think they're going to turn the corner. And a week ago, I thought there was zero chance the Republicans keep the House. Now I think it might be 50-50. I really thought the Democrat optics last night in front of 50 million people were just absolutely devastating to them. I don't know why they did that, but look, bad for them, good for us. John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth. Thank you, Congressman.